This clinic is going to focus on balance beam. The clinicians are Marilyn Bliley and Cookie Batch. The focus is going to be on level 10. It is part of the Series 1, Round 3 Test Prep clinics that we were doing in the summer and fall of 2022. First, we're going to provide a quick review of the basic requirements for balance beam, and then we're going to spend more time on areas that are more difficult for us to assess when we are judging beam. In addition, we're going to highlight some of the composition deductions for beam and give some examples of those. Throughout the entire clinic, we're going to highlight changes in the 2022-26 Code of Points. We're going to start with a review of the special requirements on beam. There are 4 special requirements on beam: an acro series, a leap or a jump with a 180 split, a 360 turn on 1 foot, and an aerial or a salto dismount that's a minimum of C. There are some exceptions that allow for a B dismount if it is directly connected to an acro series with a minimum of a C acro skill, or a C acro flight, or a dance element. The start value for level 10 is 9.5. In order to obtain that 9.5, the gymnast must have a minimum of 3 A's, 3 B's, and 2 C's, in addition to her 4 special requirements. The gymnast may earn up to 5/10 in bonus through connective value bonus or DE bonus. Missing special requirements or value parts are deducted from the start value. In order to achieve a 10.0 start value, the routine must show both connective value bonus and DE bonus. The gymnast has to have at least 1/10 in DE bonus and at least 1/10 in CV bonus. Then the remaining 3/10 can be earned through either DE bonus or connective value bonus. If she has all 5/10 of her bonus, the maximum start value is 10.0. Occasionally, there's an additional 3/10 that is deducted from the start value, and that is when the exercise does not have a dismount. It's sometimes confusing for us, so Marilyn came up with this way of helping us remember. Basically, the 3/10 deduction for no dismount applies when there is no value part awarded. So, for example, if no dismount was attempted, obviously there's no value part. The same if there was an early termination of the routine, there's no value part. If the gymnast falls on the salto dismount without landing on the bottom of her feet first, then there is also no value part awarded. If the gymnast performs a restricted element for the level, there would be no value part awarded, but level 10 has no restrictions, so that won't apply for a level 10 gymnast. If the dismount is not listed in the code, or if the coach assists or spots during performance of the element, then no value part is awarded. When value part is awarded, we do not apply the 3/10 deduction. And 2 examples are when the coach spots the gymnast upon landing the dismount, then the gymnast gets both the value part credit and the special requirement, and we would not deduct 3/10 for no dismount. Likewise, when the gymnast performs a dismount with hand support instead of a salto or aerial. In this case, the gymnast performed a value part, most likely, so she would get the appropriate value part credit. She would be missing the special requirement, but we would not deduct 3/10 for no dismount. The connective value bonus on beam has stayed the same as it was in the previous cycle. However, there is one change in the connection value bonus of 2 acro flight elements that include at least a C salto. The change is that the mount may now be included in this bonus principle. Only the dismount is excluded. In the past, both the mount and the dismount were excluded. Remember that the 3 acro flight element series always had mounts and dismounts included in the connection value, so there's no change in that. Here's an example of that new CV bonus principle involving the mount. The gymnast performs a round-off back layout step-out, back layout step-out. The mount has an E value, and the layout step-out has a C value. So she will earn 2/10 connective value for the E plus the C. However, be careful with this because she will not get credit for her acro series because the acro series must start and end on the beam. The mount does not start on the beam, therefore she will not be able to use this combination for her acro series requirement. Level 10 gymnasts are eligible to receive an additional bonus of 1/10. This is not included in the start value, but is added to the score after the score is calculated. In order to be eligible for the additional 1/10 bonus, the gymnast must have a 10.0 start value. She must have at least 6/10 or more in total bonus, and she must have a minimum of 1 E, and on beam and floor, that E must be an acro skill. It cannot be a dance skill. Now, Marilyn is going to help us with making some of those difficult decisions that we have to face when we have broken acro series, broken dance series, or incomplete dance series, and also some of the composition areas. Marilyn, why don't you start us off with broken acro series?
Broken acro series, we all remember that back acro series, slow as no, but it's also the side to back, like your cartwheel roundoffs to backward. Anything where the series is going down the beam, if we think of it that way. So if it's slow, it's broken. Or if the arms are moving as low as the thigh or further back after landing that first element in connection, then it also breaks it. Remember that the circling action that's inherent in arm pattern for gainer type doesn't automatically break the connection. So the non-flight acro series, any direction, so your forward or your sideward acro flight series, or your counter flight series, your mixed series, your dance series, for all of those, the lack of tempo or poor rhythm up to 2 deduction. And so this is your slow continuous connection that has to be in line with the beam. In the connection itself, if they have a balance error in the skill, but not in the connection, that doesn't necessarily break it. But if it's not in line with the beam anymore, then that'll break the connection. Like the arm circle still doesn't necessarily break a connection as long as the body keeps moving. In your dance series, the series is broken if that free leg drops and lifts again, like in a cat leap or a hitch kick. And also in the dance series, if the trunk stops the forward movement, those are definitely breaking the connection. So for your lack of tempo, the dance series, mixed series, acro, the exception, the back acro or the side to back acro with 1 more flights is no deduction for slow continuous connections. So the arm finished and you have your immediate takeoff. And so this is that double bounce some people call. They land in a plie, they straighten all the way, then that breaks it. But if they just land in the plie, straighten just a little bit, so it's a little bit of a pump. If you see that, then that's a deduction. But if they don't do that, there's no deduction. So you're 0.5 to 1. Your body continues moving down the beam, the arm swings and the legs, that's when you might have one or the other. But I always like to think if there's both, then you're going to be taking that 1/10. And if you have the torso trunk deviation in line with the beam without the arm swings, and that's your 1/5 to 2/10 deduction. So let's look at this dance and see if you think this is connected. Was it completed? And what would you take on that balance error? So she does that straight jump straddle, her stretch jump. Look at how nice pointed toes she has, and she does get some amplitude. But look at where she's landing that straddle. It's more like a 3/4. If you slow-mo, you can really see that she turns just a little bit ahead of time. And there she's landing right at the quarter. This will be one of those judgment calls that you have to make in a split second. And one that's close like this, you're going to have differences of opinions, but you would take incomplete for sure. So just remember all your series are broken. If there's a stop, loss of balance, deviation of body movement, not in line with the beam, repositioning, pivoting that foot, I think that's a hard one. If you don't have your eyes looking at the right spot of the gymnast, we miss that pivoting to the next skill, that extra hop or jump between, that double plie when they land in a plie, straighten all the way and plie again. Also kicking that leg above 45. And so all of these, you have to really have them in your head so that you don't miss any of them. Beam is one of those things that takes total concentration the whole time. So let's look at this and tell me what you think. If this is broken, connected, if so, why? So back tuck. But when you see the back tuck, did you think it was broken? Remember, slow is no. So she paused. She actually stopped, in my opinion. Plus, she has bringing her arms back behind her thighs. So it gets broken because of two. When you think about balance error there, so whenever your body goes down to horizontal, you're going to take up to 2/10 out of the 3/10 for balance. Let's look at this acro series. Is this connected or broken? So don't you wish we would see connections like that all the time so that we didn't have to think so hard? We know this one gets connected. We do see little knees and feet though, so it's not without deductions. So look at the compositional deductions. We all know 1/10 is if we don't perform acro in two different directions, it has to be either a forward side plus a back. It always have to have the back. And if it's only in the dismount, it's an 0.5. We have 1/10 for overuse of dance elements with the same shape. So if you have more than 2 wolf or tuck elements with or without turn, or more than 2 straddle jumps with or without a turn. And remember, the switch side is not considered a straddle jump. The 2/10 lack of dance series with a minimum of 2 dance, groups 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes we have difficulty thinking about where the mount is it dance or acro? And so the code has a D listed by any mount that counts for dance, and the other ones are going to be acro. We also have insufficient use of the entire beam. 1/10 is insufficient level changes throughout the exercise, and another 10th is spatial use, entire length of the beam. The next slide is compositional that has changed. So we have an 0.5 for each time that they fail to show movements or choreography in 2 of the 3 directions. We want to see forward or backward or sideward. You have to have 2 of those in the non-value part. Composition deduction change is anything more than 1 pivot turn. It's 1/10, but these are on 2 straight legs. Examples of the allowable 180 turns. So if you have a turn on 1 foot, a turn in a squat or demi-plie, or a quarter turn, all those are acceptable. So you have to somehow notate on your paper. And so you'll see, and when we do our routines, anytime we have a pivot turn that would count where they only have 1, it's like a U with 2 feet in it. And so a lot of times if the others are just pivot turns that are acceptable, we'll just put the U. And so then you can go back in your shorthand and figure out which, if there's more than 1. Another composition is beam not up to competitive level. On our website, we have charts. In the appendix, they have the words for USAG. And to me, I like to have one of these charts because it's so much easier for me to just look at and decipher. We are going to go through the 1/5 and 2/10 because it makes a difference whether the series is a BC series versus the BD, if there's a D acro in the acro series or a C in the acro series. On this slide, I have the acro, no deduction. And so you can see that for the BC salto series, you have to have additional DE and plus the C. If you have the BBC, the C does not have to be a salto now, but you still have to have the additional DE and a C. Now, if you have 2 C saltos in your acro series, then you only need the additional DE because now your other salto is in your series. When you go to your BD, so you have a D salto in your series, you still need the DE for no deduction. Remember dance, anytime you have 3 Cs, there's no deduction. And for dismount, there's no deduction if you have a DE dismount or a B acro connected to a C dismount or a C dance connected to a C dismount. Those are all no deductions. So now to clarify the flat 1/5 deduction with a max of a C in the acro flight series. If you have a BC salto series only, that's your 1/5, or if you have the BC non-salto, so you have the back handspring, 1 arm back handspring, plus a D, then you'd have the 0.15. So the next slide shows what happens with the D acro series. If you have the BD series only and you don't have anything additional, that's your 1/5. Or if you didn't do the flight series, but you still have an additional DE, that's your 1/5. Now the 2/10, remember it says all the way over to the left, if all criteria apply. If there's no acro flight series or the acro flight series is without a salto or an aerial, Then if you don't have the additional C, then you would have your 2/10. Or if you perform only an isolated C, then you'd have your 2/10. An example they give is back tuck, but they broke the series and they have no other acro. So now we know that when they broke the series, only the first back tuck gets a value part and the second is a 0. There would be no additional C, so there is your 2/10 also. We have deleted some skills. All knee turns have been deleted out of the code. And also all the full turns holding the leg at horizontal or 45 above. And so we still have those that hold, the leg with a 180 split. So now we have the full turn with the leg held. Remember, if it was 45 to horizontal, they cannot hold it. So she's above the 45. Look to make sure if she's not split 180 degrees, we have the up to 2 for insufficient split. And now we have the double turn with the leg held at 180 is your E. You can see that that leg is not quite 180. She still qualifies to get the skill and just an up to 2 for insufficient split. Compare it to this example. No question, that's the 180. And so you can see when you look at that 180, oh yeah, I can take on the other one. Remember your cartwheels, all variations are considered different elements for value part credit. So your cartwheel, your one-arm cartwheel, your forearm, or your chest stand, each one of them is a different skill, even though it's under the same number. Your dive cartwheel with the flight before or after, the round off, and the cartwheel mount. So we have a new skill this year. It's a cartwheel with hands on the springboard or mat to finish in front support. It's an A value part. Because of this mount, we've changed the evaluation and timing of the beam now begins when hands or feet leave the mat. Before it just said feet. And so now it's when hands or feet leave the mat, the timing will start. So we have a couple pictures here of 2 variations of the cartwheel mount. That's an A. The first one, she's facing the beam. Time started when her hands left the mat. And this one, and she does the cartwheel alongside the beam onto the beam. And so again, the timing started when her hands left the mat. So we have some description changes. We have our turns in the tuck stand. The free leg can now be forward or sideward, horizontal. We also have the cat leap, the scissors leap forward or backward with bent legs. Now the legs can be parallel or turned out. So the thighs at horizontal with 90-degree hip angle and bent in the turnout or parallel. Failed to reach horizontal with both legs is up to 1/10 each. Incorrect leg, lack of knee bend is up to 2. Lack of alternate leg lift, then you'd credit it as a tuck jump. And then you could use that precision of dance if one is going forward and one is going sidewards. And I think we have a couple of pictures. And so that one showed the parallel. And so we want to still have more amplitude. So remember, we have to take if her legs don't get to horizontal plus the amplitude. Beautiful positioning, beautiful split. So notice on this beat jump, the amplitude. Do you see how she has ample time to point her toes? Beautiful amplitude. So on the tuck turns that we talked about, turns and tuck stand, the turn is completed when the support foot and hips have reached the 360, the full rotation, and the free leg touches the beam. If the foot of the free leg lands on the beam prior to the full rotation of the support foot and hips, the turn is considered completed when the foot touches the beam. And so you're going to deduct accordingly the rotation of the support foot and hips at the time when the free leg touches. We have one here. It's just a full wolf turn. You can see her leg starts dropping, but it doesn't actually touch. She's all the way around when the foot touches. You can see where it was up as she's coming around though, and then it's dropping, but it doesn't actually hit the beam until she's all the way around. So we also have a description change of the dismount, the salto forward tuck or pike. It's added from 1 foot and the swing or from 2 feet. It's also with a half a turn. And then we have the full illusion. And clarification on that, it's different than a normal turn on one foot. The releve is less significant and the heel drop is not decisive. And you need to look where the shoulders and hips are when the free leg makes contact with the beam. And don't forget, there's only an E and a C, there's no D. So your full illusion is E, where your half illusion is C. And the brief touching of the beam with one hand is permitted. We also have execution deductions that have changed a little bit. The wording has changed on the incorrect body alignment, posture in non-value parts throughout the exercise. This is the non-value parts throughout. We also have the relaxed incorrect footwork in the non-value parts throughout the exercise. It was up to 2, and we have made it so it's the same, so your brain doesn't go in tailspin going from compulsories to optionals. So they're both up to 3 now. So we also have our concentration pause. Our 1/10 is for 2 seconds. For more than 2 seconds, it's a 2/10. And remember, really, you get all of those 2 seconds. And so once you 1,001, 1,002, when you hit that 1,003, so it's more than the 2 seconds. You begin counting when the gymnast is stationary or is readjusting the arms, feet, or body prior to initiating an element or series. And so, I think that's the hard part, is when do I start counting? These are just a couple examples of our incorrect body posture and footwork. You can see on the first one, the sickle foot, and then body posture on the second slide. You can see how she's so relaxed. We like the stomach in, the shoulders down, the hips under. So we would take footwork and body posture on both of those. You would mark that on your paper so that when you get to the end, if you have several of those marks, then you would take up to 3 in each category. Artistry now, I like to think of it as CPE, choreography, personal style expression. Under variety of choreography now, we say unnecessary adjustments and our steps without choreography. In our breakdown of the routines, we put XM for extra movements, just it's easy to write. If you have just one of those XMs on your paper, you wouldn't take anything out of the artistry. You might take it for something else, but you wouldn't take it just if that's the only thing that you had. And so you want a couple or several of those, under that 05 to 1/10. We can see some here in the slide. So you can see she stopped, she's adjusting again and again. And so you would have that XM on your paper. And so here's another one. You'd be counting again. And so here she stopped and she's, moving, but adjusting just a little bit. So you're taking the choreography and you're also counting to see if she is going to be a 1/10 or 2/10 for concentration pause. Quality of movement reflecting personal style. We like to see, a little bit of them in that routine. And expression, we like to see them projecting, have focus, not just looking down on the beam, with their head up and just projecting things. We also have the insufficient variation in rhythm and tempo throughout the exercise. Now they have added wording that says, consider variation in rhythm and tempo, the fluidity. And we also have the insufficient sureness of a performance throughout the exercise. This is a little bit different. These are, you can tell when they are really nervous, before going into some of their harder skills. And so they're always just stopping. It's a disconnect. Equipment failure. When there's equipment failure, the gymnast may resume from where the equipment failure occurred, but our judging resumes at the point of the equipment failure. So like if they're going to do their dismount and they knock off the end, and so she falls on the dismount, she can get up and still do the series into the dismount, but you would not start judging until the point where the dismount, where she fell. They are not able to redo their whole routines anymore. I think we have an example. So she does her series and she falls. You can see there she knocked off the end cap, and so she fell on the dismount. She can start her series into the dismount, but you wouldn't start judging until she does her dismount and evaluate just the dismount. So you'd count the first fall from the acro series, but you would not count the fall before the equipment failure. fall time, remember that now fall time begins after medical assessment is complete. So before we said once they get to their feet. So now if a gymnast lands, she can get up if they still are trying to assess her, after she is standing. So I think that makes a huge difference, probably more so on vault.
Next, we want to spend some time talking about the C and the D versions of the split jump with half turn on beam. There's 2 versions in the code, and these can be confusing and hard for us to see. So for the C version, the picture on the left, we need to see the split in the front to back position in the air, with the front knee up and the back knee under. For the D version, however, we'll see the gymnast performing that split jump either in the straddle position, like you see in the diagram on the right, the piked straddle jump, or you'll see it in the side split position. So she's centered with her legs out to the side, and in this case, both knees are up toward the ceiling. We have some examples of both the C and the D version of this skill. The first is the C version of the split jump with a half turn, and as you can see, the gymnast's legs are forward and backward in the 180-degree split position. Her front knee is up and her back knee is under. Looks just like a split jump on beam. For the D version, we're going to show you 3 views, and these are the same gymnast, the same routine. Here's the first one. She does her straddle jump, and she's doing a D version of this skill, which is really hard to see from this viewpoint. But as you can see, she's got this 180 side split position. In the second view of this, it's easier for us to see the 180-degree side split position. And you'll see that both her knees are turned up to the ceiling. Her head and torso are twisted just a little bit because she's trying to see the beam, of course. So that sometimes gives us the appearance that this split was the C version rather than the D version. And this is the same gymnast. And here it actually looks like from this camera angle that she's doing the straddle pike position. It's all the same gymnast, same performance. This is a side-by-side of the C version and the D version. They're both in 180 split. In the version on the left, it's a definite split position, like a split jump. The front knee is up, the back knee is under. In the D version, it's a side split jump, and both knees are up, and she has the 180-degree split in the air. Here's an example of one that's kind of in between. So when you see this in the stop action, you'll be able to see that her front leg is, the knee is turned up, or almost turned up, and the back leg is almost turned up. It's kind of half turned up and half turned to the front, but she is showing the side split position. So most likely you would be able to award this the D value part and just take some execution deductions. We want to spend a little time talking about beam skills that end in a scale. In order to get the value part credit, there are 2 technical requirements. The leg must have an immediate lift to a minimum of horizontal, and it must be held for 2 seconds. There is a slight lowering of the free leg that is acceptable, but once the leg reaches horizontal, it needs to stay there for the 2 seconds. So we're going to look at some examples here. The first one, the front aerial to a scale. She doesn't meet either technical requirement. Her leg does not get to horizontal, and she did not hold it for 2 seconds. This gymnast gets her leg to horizontal with a slight knee bend, but she does not hold it for 2 seconds. This gymnast is a good example of the leg lowering a little bit and then coming up to horizontal. She did not hold it, however. And this gymnast was attempting to do the scale, but lost her balance, and she didn't reach either horizontal with her scale leg or held it for 2 seconds, so she would not receive the higher value part. And this is an excellent example of a gymnast who gets above horizontal and holds the leg for the 2 seconds. And this is an excellent example of a gymnast who does the illusion full to a scale. She gets her leg above horizontal and holds it for 2 seconds.